except the officers who had the power of changing everything. And also we had the guy who was driving the machine to open these graves. And he also is here with us today. I was tasked by the regime for 1 year to open the graves of innocent people, and I did that. It wasn't optional. I could do anything about it. I would die if I didn't do it. And I did it every single day, and we used to bury over 400 people on a daily basis. So over 1 year, I had to witness and to open the grave with my bulldozer. I had to open the grave for over 100,000 people myself, with the people that were involved, that were recruited by the regime. And that, unfortunately, is brutal. More unfortunately, it is still happening today. And the regime is still running its detention centers, which are more like torture chambers, and people are being arrested on a daily basis, people being killed on a daily basis, and here comes our responsibility. And I want you to understand that the regime is not going to stop its brutality, and your involvement is very necessary. Those people that are being killed on a daily basis are humans that deserve your attention, humans that just look like you, regardless of where you're from. They just look like you. They have lives, they have stories, they have families, and therefore I want to stand before you here today telling you that you need to be involved, you need to care, you need to talk to the politicians, you need to make actions, you need to have consistency so we can at some point reach not only freedom, but justice for the Syrian people and the Syrian victims. And thank you. And it's very sad that we have to discover more Caesar and more grave digger, but Syria is full of Caesars and grave diggers and Omars and people who suffer for years. And it's enough to suffer for 1 hour on the hand of the Syrian regime to start a revolution. It's not. A lot of people ask the question, oh, maybe it was better if you didn't start anything, No, that's not true. Your life is not more important than that person that's been arrested since 1982, being tortured on a daily basis. Why would he be there? He is innocent. But for one person, for one individual, we should start a revolution. Because this is not about the one individual, this is about the life of a human being. If the regime doesn't have respect for one life of a human being, the regime should never exist. How much do we sacrifice to get freedom from that regime? Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Because Because the regime is able to dehumanize one person, they will dehumanize the rest. If they can kill one person without your opposition, they can kill the rest. And I'll take you back to the moment of the darkness. The worse it gets, the more likely you are to find hope in that. I know that the regime is trying to sell a narrative where there is no chance, there is no way. You know, the world, oh, Russia is with me, China is with me. You know, the US is doing nothing, the West is doing nothing. That's the narrative of the Syrian regime. Don't spread that narrative. There are enough people that care. We just need to organize our forces, come together, try to find creative ways of helping. And that creative way, I used to say, is that by doing something you love doing. You know, I used to say, I hate writing. You know, so I don't write an article to bring awareness about Syria. Guess why? Because if I hate writing, you wouldn't like my article. It would suck. It would be so bad. But there's something I love doing that I can use for good. I love public speaking. So I can deliver 20 speeches a day, not being tired of it. And I know the revolution in Syria won't end today. Even if the regime falls tomorrow, we will still need to work a lot. And I keep still using the things that I love the most, which is public speaking in this case. And I won't get tired of it. I can be consistent. I can bring awareness about what's happening for a very long time. And I wanted to think about what is the thing that you enjoy doing? What's your talent? And what cause do you care about? It could be Syria. For some it could be Ukraine. For some it could be Afghanistan. It could be anyway. It could be you here in your community in London, you know. So think about what is the thing that you're most talented in doing. And what is the cause you care about? How can we combine that? How can you work on something you love doing? Because that thing is what's going to help you survive. What's going to help you receive that trust from your surrounding. You know, for me, it wasn't that time itself that all started. I started to learn things that were useful. And I started to enjoy learning, teaching people things. And there, I use it on a daily basis to save lives. And your scenario could be something else. It could be math, it could be physics, it could be dance, it could be art, it could be anything. Anything you're doing in your life, anything you enjoy doing in your life, could be used for good. And if you can't find a way with your thoughts, ask ChatGPT. How can I use dance to bring awareness about Syria? I'm telling you, you will be surprised how many good ways you will find through ChatGPT, Google, any AI or non-AI platforms. There are many ways of doing something. Most importantly, the worst thing you can do is not doing anything. The worst you can do is think, oh, there's nothing to be done. You will be helping the regime killing more people. And if you haven't seen the Caesar photos, you should go by the exhibition in room S117 and see. The regime is killing people on a daily basis. Those people have stories. Those people had love stories like mine. And they ended up maybe married to the girl I love. The girl I love, when I get out of prison, she called me and I had a lovely call for a few minutes before she started talking about her engagement party and her wedding. I said, some other people had a very successful story of love and now they are just dead. We don't want that to happen to other people. If you don't wish it for yourself, for your beloved ones, you shouldn't accept it for other people. And not accepting it is not just a thought. It's not just a word you say. It's an action you take. So we want you today, before you leave this room, to think about an action. Come, discuss it with us in person. There's a panel coming after me, and I will be outside, waiting for you. All of you. Come and talk, shake our hands, and ask us a couple of questions. We would like to have you engaged and involved. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Omar al-Shogre and the honored guests for giving such a special speech. Now to the second part of the panel, which is about Syria between reality and politics. So we want to introduce Dr. Mohammad al-Hadj from SCAN UK, Mrs. Ellie Knott, the CEO of David Knott Foundation, Celine Qasim from the media director of the Syrian Emergency Task Force, and this panel will be moderated by Dr. Roda Abbara, also from SCAN UK. Thank you.
So thank you very much to Omar and his colleagues and also to the SOAS Syria team for the start of what I hope will be a very engaging and hopefully inspiring evening where we're able to discuss things pertinent to Syria both now but also as we look to the future. So I'm really pleased to have our three guests with us today. They come with different perspectives on Syria, different experiences, and all of them have passionately supported Syrians over the last few years and continue to do so now. The way we're going to frame the discussion, and we really want to hear from you in this room and the questions that you have from our panellists. So for the first 30 minutes or so, what we're going to do is have a round of relatively short-fire questions exploring how have we got to this point? How have we got to this point in terms of the politics, what's happened in Syria even before the uprisings, what's happened to, I'm a physician, so what's happened to healthcare and the health system, and also where do we go from now? Is there accountability for Omar, the gravedigger, the Bulldozer Driver, and the many others who have been forced to do horrific things, who've experienced horrific things, and have gone through the prison systems and the torture machines in Syria. The current estimates of people who are currently in prison is in the region of 140, 150,000. I expect it is far, far more. But whenever I speak to Syrians, the number of times when I have built a relationship with someone and they eventually say that actually they were imprisoned, these are mostly clinicians that I have worked with over the years, so doctors. These are not political activists, these are doctors. Many of them imprisoned because they helped save the lives and treat injured people who were considered opposed to the government because their work was criminalised. Some were imprisoned for a day, perhaps they're the lucky ones, some for longer. Some of them had their relatives imprisoned when they couldn't capture them, so their elderly fathers, their elderly relatives. I don't know the true estimates, and maybe people here will know, but I think I read somewhere that perhaps even more than 1 million people, 1 million Syrians have been through the prison system in Syria. And I think the Syrians in this room, if you were to put up a show of hands of personal experience, whether yourselves or your families have been in the prison system or have been killed during the Syrian conflict, I'd say that many of us would have hands to raise tonight. So what I'd like to do is direct questions to our panellists, and what we'll try and do is have 2 or 3 rounds of questions exploring different aspects of the Syrian conflict, of the accountability mechanisms that are currently ongoing. You'll know about the ICJ occurring at The Hague at the moment, but also on healthcare and the health system. So what I'd like to do is start with Dr. Mohammad Hadj Ali of SCAN UK. I'm going to start with a simple question. How did we get to this point?
Good evening, everyone. I'm very much delighted actually to be here amongst you today. Our Syrian community in the UK, our friends, our supporters, our allies. And what I would like to say that we started this story 12 years ago. It's exactly with the story of any man like Omar al-Shogre, when we lived our life and we were thinking about our future and we were thinking of building Syria again and the next decade in a better way, in a better shape. And this is when we're looking at other countries as well. But in fact, the picture was not that rosy when the Arab Spring started, and then Syrian people dared to go to the streets, just thinking about a better future for everyone there in that country. And that was the biggest crime we did in a country being dictated over decades. This is what we did actually in 2011. Just dreaming was a big problem in a country which being dictated over decades by the same family. And when people dared there to think about just expansion of human rights, improving their lives, and thinking about like employment and opportunities and freedom as well, just like a little word, freedom, written on the walls by school children, the whole story started. From peaceful demonstrations, as been always described in Syria, to a full scale of a war launched by whom? By a government on its own civilians, on its own people. As Omar said actually, when he started seeing these soldiers, Because it's the army, this is our army. These are the police officers who are meant to be protecting us, working for us, and working for security of this country and its own people. And in fact, the story, it's completely different. These forces and the army is to protect a family, and to protect a rule, and to protect a dictatorship. And it's never been meant to protect their own people. I had to hear, unfortunately, to witnesses and eyewitnesses. And when I looked at the figures today, I just tried to refresh the figures in my mind again about those who are being refugees or forced to be displaced, or those who are being detained, or those who are being lost in my beloved country. It's shocking, because the estimation is always higher than what's being documented and what you can see by Google. We talk about more than 50% of the population of my country, now they are refugees or internally displaced. Nearly 7 million people internally displaced inside Syria, more than 6 million people in the neighboring countries, and more in diaspora. So these are the figures of refugees. If you look at the figures of those who are detained, we talk about more than 500,000 people lost their lives there just because they spoke about freedom and they protested, right? But the reality actually, if probably one day all the facts coming by bulldozer drivers, not driver, and grave diggers, we're going to listen to more shocking figures. We believe that the figures are higher and higher than what being documented there. So we talk about high figure of people who being like detained. I mentioned about 140,000 people being detained, but the figures in reality is much more higher. So I want to just come back to your question really. We talk about now as figures over 12 years, the country now, it's been unfortunately under like 4 regions, 4 like different authorities, and I would love always to talk about one united Syria. And our perspective is for all united Syria and for all our population. So we talk about more than half of the population of Syria, refugees, internally displaced, and we talk about, we would say by some estimations, nearly 1 million people being killed and announced dead, and we talk about like hundreds of thousands of people being detained.
Cool. So thank you very much, Mohammad. Those are sobering figures, and always when we talk with such high numbers, that behind every figure there's a human being, like we've seen from Omar so eloquently. And I think another important figure for us all to remember and to motivate us for the future is there are 2 million Syrian children out of education. And so even if we give up hope, we cannot give up hope for the next generation. Can we come back to health, Ellie? So Mohammad touched on the fragmentation across the country, and of course we want to think of Syria as one entity. But some people have described the health system or the health systems in Syria as being fragmented across all of these different areas. And I know you're currently doing your PhD particularly focused on the health system in the northwest of Syria. Could you speak to us a little bit about the impact in terms of health and healthcare and how that has evolved up until this point during the conflict?
Thank you, Rula. I will talk about that. And I came with lots of interesting facts about UN Security Council resolutions and the health system and statistics and things like that. But inspired by Omar, I'm going to take a slightly different tack. Because Omar talked about love, and my connection with Syria is one of love. And you might say, what does a British girl from Devon, why is she writing her PhD on Syria? Why did she set up a foundation where Syria and Syria's